but also, and this is what is I think is sometimes deemed controversial, but the Republicans, we're here to stay. Like, we're not going anywhere. We're gonna be involved. We're not necessarily just the future of the party, we are the party. That's something that we really need to start saying is that we are the party right now. We are the target base that the party needs to message to. And so we're not here to take over. We are here to learn, get experience, get involved. And so when people that have been in leadership for so long move on, we know what to do. But also too, if you're a viewer, if you're listening and you have grandchildren, children that want to get involved, please connect them with us. It's georgiayr.org. You can see all of our chapters on there. We're across the state from Northwest Georgia up in like Dalton, Georgia to the city, all the way down to now Lowndes County in Valdosta. We're involved everywhere. And so we can get you plugged in and we would love to have you.
That's awesome. Lady, I really appreciate this. I hope we get an older audience in the party that really watches this and pays attention to this, because there's a lot of fruit in this interview here. I mean, I really like what you've had to say, and I think you've given us some keen insights in what a younger demographic is expecting and what they're looking for and what they need. So hopefully I will say this, because I'm guilty of saying it too in my generation. I'm the last year of the baby boomers, okay? We often say when we're doing political stuff, we're doing it for the future generations. I'm doing this for my kids and my grandkids. Well, we've got to give our kids and our grandkids who are your age a chance to be in leadership positions. We've got to give them a chance to lobby for issues that are important to them. And we've got to ask them what's important to them from now on. So hopefully we've given them some insight into how to do that in this interview. Hi, and welcome to Editorial Interchange. Have two really special guests today. We have Winslow Jones and Jacquelyn Harn. We're going for the young female conservative interview today, and we want to get some insights from both of them. And also, too, one of the things that we love to do, one of our core missions, is highlighting local economies. And we always ask the people we interview if they want to give a shout out to a locally owned business in their area. Do you all have one, Winslow? You want to give us one first?
Yeah, so I've been living in the Chastain Park, now just north of Chastain Park area for the last, oh gosh, since November of 2016. And I was the first business that jumped to my mind is Corks and Caps. It's a wine store. They sell wine and liquor. I'm a big wine person, so it's that they have a lot of different wines from all over the world, and wines that you can't really find many places. And I believe he's the manager there. I think his name is John. Anyway, he always remembers me when I walk in, and always tries to be helpful. Help me find what I'm exactly looking for. And I actually ran into him at one of our happy hours back in March, and he just so happened to be there, and it was cool just to kind of reconnect with him. But I always try to visit there when I can, get
That
stocked up on wine. So
that great personal service you get from locally owned businesses, right? Where they remember your name and you actually are somebody when you come in the front door. That's great.
yes.
Jacquelyn,
Mhm.
you want to give us somebody?
Yeah, so the first business came to mind is they own the Olive Tree and Vine, which is actually in downtown Cartersville. It basically sell olive oil, but also they have a coffee shop in the back. And the reason I bring them up is because whenever we have someone that wants to host an event, needs a sponsor for an event, needs a free space, they are more than happy to stay open later for young Republicans, for a conservative cause. Whenever we need someone to go online or be on socials as far as promoting different economic ventures. So, like recently, they did a video about how crucial the Trump tax cuts are. And they are more than happy to go on the record and actually say how important it is for businesses, which a lot of small business owners, because they're afraid of losing clientele or whatever else, a lot of them aren't able to do that. And so they are staunch conservatives, and I love them dearly. They are so sweet to young Republicans. So.
That's great. Well, thank you, ladies. Hey, look, you two are both active in party politics. Have participated in different organizations related to conservative Republican politics and whatnot. Um, a lot of people in your age category, they're they either think they're too busy or they just can't get mentally engaged in politics. Give us a little bit of insight about how you guys got involved in politics and what you're currently engaged in now in terms of organizational structure. Jacquelyn, you want to start?
Yeah. So the story I love to tell is in 2015, my dad drugged me to one of President Trump's first rallies when he was running for president. It was a small rally of like maybe 3,000 people in Hilton Head, South Carolina. So I'm from Savannah. It was right across the river. And I absolutely fell in love with politics then. I was 16 at the time, so I wasn't able to vote in the 2016 election, but it got me so invested in politics. I thought it was so cool how they had staff that literally just worked for these people running for office. They were setting up events, setting up rallies, and I was like, I want to do that one day. And so I was connected to someone working for the Savannah mayor at the time. And I was ended up interning for him for a while on the official side, ended up working for his reelection campaign. And it just went from there. Got a job with Congressman Buddy Carter back in Savannah before I moved up to Atlanta with Americans for Prosperity. And so I caught the political bug early, but it's been so much fun, and I love getting more younger people plugged into the process.
Awesome. Winslow, how about you?
Yeah, so I didn't get the bug early. Actually, politics was not at the forefront of my mind my whole young years and in my 20s even. I come from a musical theater background and then launched into a healthcare field, the healthcare field. I'm a physical therapist now. It wasn't until about, I would say, probably 2018, 17, 18, something like that. My mom, I always tell the story of her. She was retired now, but was an early intervention teacher down in Bibb County public school system. And basically her experience with the corruption behind government run schools and how in these communities, it was just kind of like the values were not basically the community values weren't, they didn't value education basically, and the she saw so much corruption with how money was spent behind the scenes, and so she started listening to Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro and Dennis Prager and people like that, and kind of turned me on to that. And then I started to realize there was a movement going on, and she and I went to a Blexit event up at the Buckhead Theater in December of 2019. And then I was just inspired by the whole movement to basically help rise of conservatism in the Black community. So I was just at a point in time in January of 2020. So that was just 5.5 years ago, where I was just looking for a group of friends and I was interested in the conservative movement. And I just Googled Atlanta young conservatives, and then Atlanta young Republicans was the first thing to pop up in my Google search. And so I just clicked on it and saw that they were having an event that week, and showed up, and I kept going back. And sure enough, I was the vice president of membership recruiting people for the next 3 years, and then consequently the president after that. So
Awesome. I love these stories. For your generation, it's kind of a sweet spot, don't you think, for your generation and politics in general, because you have social media and you have 30 different things that you can watch. The programming is so diverse on the internet with social media. It's not just three networks like when I was your age, it was three networks and a CNN. That's what we had to do it with. And if they bored you to tears and they did 15-second interviews with a candidate that were nebulous, that was one thing. But you have the Joe Rogans and the Candaces and all these people. Do you think that's making a difference with people in your generation?
absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, it's
100%.
how we absorb information. It's our first go-to source of information. It's just the way it's kind of turned out with our iPhones and the apps, and it's just easy to get your information and absorb it that way. It's the quickest go-to. So I think it's definitely very important with influencing the young minds with this
And,
new
and
technology.
and is there a general? I know this is pretty much the prevailing thought, but in people your age, is there a general distrust of the what we call the mainstream media? So to the point where they're not viewing that; they're going to the internet first to see what's going on.
I definitely think so. I think a lot of younger people, they see a headline somewhere on Twitter, Instagram, whatever else, and then they are looking into that more. It's not just like they come home and they have Fox News on in the background or Newsmax on. Like we're not a generation that has TV on in the background all the time, right? We use streaming services. And so that's the first thing we see sometimes is a political ad on either Netflix or Max has ads, Hulu has ads. We see it on there, or we see it on Twitter and Instagram, really. So I think from that point, we have a generation of people that I think researches more issues more than previous generations that just hear something on TV from one side.
I think it's pretty obvious too that the political persuasion bias is so heavy in these major media news sources that we kind of know what to expect. It's not necessarily it's increasingly gone away from objectivity, and it's pretty apparent. It's very apparent to the millennials and the Gen Z, and even younger than that now.
In your circles, talking to your friends and associates, what are the hot issues for younger Republicans?
So national,
Man, there's a handful.
Well, go
so
ahead,
the,
give us
the
some.
economy, the
The economy.
affordability,
Mhm.
the affordability of things, and how why are we not having as many children these days? I mean, I would
Yeah.
argue that a lot of it is they're too afraid it's going to be too expensive. Whereas you had people in our grandparents' generation, for instance, commonly have 5, 6 kids, and they did, even without very much money. It wasn't as hard to buy a home back when you were 22 years old, back in the 1950s, 1960s. So we had a meeting last year around home ownership, the challenges for young Americans with home ownership, and it was a very interesting topic for a lot of people. And so I would say economy, affordability, just being able to make our first investments in our life that will help increase our income and wealth and be able to leave something for our future generations and our family.
What do you think,
Or
Jacqueline?
even take it one step further. Obviously, the economy is like the main one. Something that I think is very Georgia specific is a lot of immigration issues. Obviously, if Lincoln Riley in Athens, we see a lot of college kids coming into the movement just because they are afraid to walk by themselves on their college campus. Um, I think that's a huge thing that I feel like a lot of other states might not necessarily deal with the further north you go. And even like we're not necessarily close to the border, but because of issues like that, it really makes young kids hyper aware of what's going on around them. And so I think that's a big intro issue to where people have experienced that or seen that because it could be a sorority sister, it could be someone in your college class that that's happened to. And when you're seeing what the president's now doing to try to reverse a lot of what the previous administration did for the past 4 years, you're interested in that because it's like, man, I can actually finally feel safe again. And that even goes past with college students. I think a lot of, because obviously we're 18 to 40 with YRs, um, you have a lot of young parents that have children that are also saying, no, I want my child to be safe at their school that they go to. And so they're even connected to that as well and really care about those issues.
Absolutely. And once you have children, is this is the general rule. Once you have children, your entire perspective changes on everything that you do in life. And I could only imagine what young adults starting to have a family now, starting to have those children, and they're looking at what's going on in public schools with the gender issues and the pronouns and the hormones that they want to put these kids on, and some school systems don't tell the parents what they're doing in the schools. I mean, I just don't know how they would even cope with that. I guess private schools, but then you've got your economic concerns again. Can you afford to put your kids in private school?
Yeah, we also
That's just been a huge thing. Yeah,
homeschooling.
Winslow, you can talk about this too. Yeah, like with the Promise Scholarship, we've had a lot of young Republican chapters at Atlanta. Winslow, you've talked about this with Atlanta, that have tried to notify parents about this new Promise Scholarship that Georgia has, to where it solves that issue with education for a lot of people with the scholarship. Because if you necessarily can't afford to homeschool because you have to work during the day, or if you can't afford a private school, it helps that small, I think it's $6,500 helps that. And so we have young Republican chapters that have been engaged in that issue because of that, because we have a lot of young parents that don't want their kids indoctrinated when they're 7 years old or 8 years old.
Right.
And it really boils down to the cultural values of the family unit, and so the parents decide what's appropriate for the child to learn. It was like our parents telling us about the birds and the bees when they felt like it was, for instance, for it was appropriate, age appropriate, when the child started asking questions and things like that. Not the schools leading up to the schools to decide when it's appropriate to talk about certain issues with children, and it's like they're making adult issues children's issues, and that's we run into a lot of problems with that, because if kids can't be as innocent as long as possible, then they're going to act like children when they're in their adulthood. So that's what I
Well,
believe.
we taped a show the other just last night, and one of the things we talked about was a Supreme Court case that they're hearing right now with Montgomery County, Maryland, and they were trying to get parents were trying to get their kids to opt out of sexually explicit conversations with elementary school students and reading books that had, gender issues and sexual issues and stuff like this. And I'm thinking, if this was 1995 and you said the school was going to do this, they would be coming with pitchforks and torches to that school to make sure that didn't happen. Now they're having to take that all the way to the Supreme Court to see if they can just opt out. That's not even taking it out of the school. That's just allowing you to pull your one child out of the class. It's just stunning, isn't it?
It is. It's a
Saying to where we've gone, like parents can't parent their own children anymore. The teachers are trying to do it for them. It's insane.
I'll tell you. Well, let me ask you this question, ladies. In several racial demographic categories in this past election, 2024, we have seen more men voting Republican than women. And what do you think that is? And are you seeing more men in your age group, in your circles, that are voting Republican than women in your age group as well? Winslow, you want to
so
start? Go ahead.
Yeah. So just given the fact there's more men that vote Republican, if that statistic being true, I wonder if it just, I listen to a lot of Jordan Peterson, and I know that there are fundamental differences between men and women across the board. There's going to be women that have more masculine characteristics, men that have more feminine characteristics. That's just how human nature is. But in general, women tend to be, the nurturers, the ones that are in touch with emotions, and so I think that it's easy to get kind of fooled by how something makes you feel right off the bat, instead of really understanding like the logic and the reason behind something. And but it's not, I'm not trying to put women and men in two different categories and saying all women are like this, all men are like this. But I think there is some kind of maybe like a nature thing where women tend to gravitate towards some, like the liberalism, like, oh, this makes me feel good, so it must be true or must be right. And I think that then there's the pragmatic side of things, where it's like, no, this is logical, this is the way of thinking that's of reason. And so I think people that tend to be more logical, reasonable, can veer a little bit more conservative with certain issues, and vice versa with other issues, with other social issues. I feel like most women tend to lean a little bit more liberal when it comes to at least the social issues. So
So
I
you
think
want to
there's
add to
There's
that?
a weird,
between men and women.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think there's a strange occurrence going on in today's culture to where men feel like they can't be men. It's almost like society is saying, like, no, you can't, like, being that male, that toxic male energy, like all of those things are popular in our society at this point. And I personally think when these young guys, because I think that was the biggest resurgence for Trump, was that you had a lot of Gen Z males going and voting for the first time for President Trump. I think they're seeing this liberal agenda being shoved down their throat of, no, we don't want you to be this manly man. You are too toxic. And they're fighting back with, I want to be able to marry. I want to be able to father children and provide for my family. And this resurgence of traditional values, I think, is the way they are combating this very liberal agenda that is being shoved down their throats via social media. They're seeing it all the time through TikTok and Instagram and everything else. And I think that's the one way they combat it, is saying, oh, wait, this is a party that is saying that it's okay if I act like a man because I am one, and it's okay that I want a family and want to take care of my household and provide for my household. I think that's why you're seeing a lot, because I can't remember the statistics of it, but they saw a resurgence of Gen Z males like never before, and they did not vote for the Democrat side. They voted for the Republican side. And you're correct, it's a smaller number of women, but I think Winslow's right. We tend to feel more. And so naturally we see, I don't know, I got asked this in a different interview. We see a picture of families being separated because they are being deported because they're here illegally. A woman's more likely to see that and go, oh my gosh, how are they separating that child from their parents? And a man's going to be like, well, I want my family to be safe. And so, yes, I do hate that for that family, but either way, they're here illegally. Like it's that come and go to where you do have some women that eventually grow up and see that. I think once they have kids, they see that. But initially in college, they're not understanding it that way at first.
I do know from the male perspective, especially white male perspective, um, the Democrat Party has so made them outcast. You know, they are the patriarchal oppressors. I mean, you can have a 5-year-old boy and they're calling that child an oppressor, you know, and I'm like, that 5-year-old boy has had no life experience to become anything close to an oppressor, but they're forcing the males, and the females kind of are somewhere in that middle zone. And then when we particularly look at college educated white women, they are still staying in that Democrat section of the spectrum. Do you think, because we're not seeing it with blue collar women as much as we are college educated, do you think it's the university environment and the way they're pushing leftism, Marxism type of theory in the universities that's maybe leaning harder on women than it is on men?
Yeah, I think nowadays women tend to have a higher rate of graduation on getting their diplomas than men do. So, yeah, I mean, as we've seen in the university system, media, Hollywood, it's just been infiltrated with left wing ideology and left wing doctrine. And we had the whole women's liberation movement back in the 70s, I believe it was. And so I think that's kind of I guess sort of made its way into the university system as well, thinking that okay, well, it's sort of like what the people around you believe and that they're your friends. So you tend to think, oh, well, this must be true because they're my friends, and it's really that simple. I mean, I even remember I went to University of Mississippi, of course, Southern school, so it was a very Southern culture. But I was in the theater department. I, had a great experience just getting trained in acting and music. And I had great professors, but I remember there being sort of that talk about it was more about social issues, to be honest with you, because that they appeal to the emotions. And so I remember my professors were, it was all about human rights and gay rights and women's rights. And it was still that rhetoric going around. And I just was like, oh, okay, cool, yeah. I mean, I wasn't into politics back then, so I was like, oh yeah, sure, everyone should have their rights. But I didn't really dive into the whole, why are they kind of pushing this agenda a little bit. It wasn't as heavy as it is nowadays. I feel like they weren't really trying to push any kind of political agenda. They just kind of give their opinions, at least in the environment where I went to college. But I came into conservatism, realizing that I was more of a conservative maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. And when I was in a very liberal environment, growing up in the arts. So it's
How about
unfortunate the arts have been synonymous with liberal or being liberal, what liberal
yeah,
means by today's standards.
right. Jacqueline, how about you?
It's shocking to me. Yeah, I'll share this anecdote. I mentioned a lot of college kids because we've recently tried to break into some of the college campuses and bring them in. Because even when I graduated from college in 2021, so not super long ago, the environment is completely different now than it was literally just 4 years ago. And you have girls coming and telling us, yes, our professors are saying, no, you need to be independent. You need to go make your own money, which is not a bad thing, but you can't do that with a man. Like marriage is going to keep you down. Like they're teaching this version of history to where obviously the woman's place is just in the home. And so they associate that at a very young age. If you're impressionable, they associate that with, oh, wait, let me not get married because my husband's just going to make me stay at home all the time. And we're trying to come in and say, and I think the movement in general, why ours do this, Republicans do this, I think candidates in the party need to do this in general, of you can do both. Like, my mom also had a job whenever I was growing up. I saved my grandparents a lot, but my mom was definitely a working mom. She was not a stay-at-home mom. And nothing against women that do that, but you can be in a happy, successful marriage and also be able to be an independent person. And so I feel like in general, young girls are taught, nope, marriage is not a good thing. You need to be able to do your own thing, be independent because you can do that. And the man is just going to keep you down. And that in general is what Republicans are pushing. That is Republican policy. And there are plenty. That's why I love people like Senator Katie Britt from Alabama. She is a senator. She is a strong woman. She is a Republican and she has young kids at the same time. Representative Lauren Daniel, when she was still, she literally is known for now in the state house here in Georgia for going to the well with her baby. Like, we need to prop up more women like that share these traditional Republican values to teach young girls, no, you can do both. You can be hardworking and successful and also still have children and be in a very traditional setting, right? Like, that's what colleges are missing and not informing their students and young girls of. There's not.
Well, let me get your opinion on this, ladies. In my younger days, the fight was Title IX, right? I was a big supporter of Title IX. I had a lot of girl cousins who didn't have a lot of opportunities to do things, even in high school, much less college, because they put all the money into the boys sports and they didn't put them in the women's sports. And you had just a few things you could do. And I was a big supporter of Title IX because I thought that was fair, right? It was a fairness issue. If we're going to spend X number of millions of dollars on the football team, we ought to at least have some sort of, equitable arrangement for women, the gymnastics team, wrestling team, whatever women want to do, and put that in there. But now you forward to today, and we have men, biological men, taking over women's sports. And I can't understand why we don't have women just storming the castle over this. I mean, there's got to be enough women who have daughters and who have played in athletics and done activities, that are being taken over by biological males. Why aren't we seeing this massive storm? We've had a couple of, really good ones, Riley and her stuff. Yeah. And so, we've seen a few people stand up, but why isn't this just a tidal wave?
Again, I think a lot of people are just afraid to get berated by the left. I think it's a fear. And that's the same reason people don't get involved in politics, is they're afraid of how they're going to be treated. That's just my personal thoughts on it. And because it takes a lot of strength and a lot of guts to get up and stand up for what's right. And it's not to say anything against any women that may be in a position where they could do it versus not do it. It was obviously a huge success that Trump signed the executive order to keep men out of women's sports. But and then you had J.K. Rowling. She's a feminist, but she stood up for what was right. She was like, this is actually against feminism. It's against the women's movement to allow transgender women. I don't even call them women, like, trans women in sports, like biological men in sports. Like, it's just absolutely ridiculous. No amount of hormones is going to change your physical makeup. And that's, any doctor should know that. And it's just common sense. You wouldn't prescribe the same amount of medication to a woman as you would a man. It's just there are
Right.
chromosomal biological differences, and that is just a fact. And but yeah, I think it has more to do with the people that don't stand up and say anything. Maybe they don't have a personal investment in it, but those that do, maybe it's just a fear of how they're going to be treated by people that are radical.
Jacqueline, you want to add anything or?
Well, I think so. And I think just going back, this is no hit towards women or anything else, but I also feel like just in general how our personalities are as females, we're more afraid of being ridiculed and disliked by people, whether we know them or not. Right? It's just how we're made up, how our brains are wired, and so I think that has a lot to do with it. specifically focusing on why young people, I think, aren't more vocal about certain things is because they're afraid of what their peers are going to say. They're afraid if their work finds out. Maybe they're not in a friendly workplace. They work a normal corporate 9 to 5, and they're concerned, oh, if my boss hears this, I'm pretty sure she leans Democrat. Like, I don't want to get fired. Like,
Mhm.
they're all thinking that. But what makes me really frustrated is men that have daughters and still just are either silent on it or think that this is okay. Like, that's probably one of the biggest issues I have with Senator Ossoff, among other things, is that he has children. And I'm like, would you want your daughter sharing a locker room with a biological male? Do you want that guy who is a biological male seeing your daughter change after gym, change for soccer practice? Like, in my mind, I cannot understand how a man who has a child, has a daughter, can just be okay with that and not have an issue with it. I think it's absolutely disgusting.
I mean, I watch these high school girls, especially, and I just watch their dreams get crushed at the state track meet, at the basketball championship, at this just recently at the softball championship. They had a male who was the pitcher, and they were just overjoyed that this guy pitched 4 shutout innings. Well, he can throw 4 times harder than any other pitcher in the sport. I mean, what do you expect? And all of these girls who have worked and trained, and their parents have spent money for training and gone to all the games and gone on the traveling teams. And then all that to have their dreams just shattered. It just breaks my heart. I just pray that we're going to have some sort of revolution on that. And people are just going to say, we've had enough of it. And they're going to just go in there and they're going to, just by the sheer mass of people, we're going to change that. I hope.
Yeah, I've
I hope
never.
so. I mean, it's insane enough. Or it's insane if we had to have legislation about it. That's what I was going to mention. Like, the fact that we had to fight for that is absolutely insane to me still.
I don't
Right.
understand the motivation behind any man. I don't care how you feel on the inside. I don't understand the motivation to think that you've accomplished something by beating a biological woman in a sport. Like,
Right.
where does that? It's a narcissism. It's a narcissism, plain and simple. They want to be the center of attention. They want to feel like they are the best at something, but yet they have to say, I'm trans. And it does not mean they're gay, a gay male. It does not mean that at all. It's two separate things. Letting trans women into the locker room, you might as well just be letting a bunch of jocks go in there as well, because does not mean that they don't have a physical attraction to your daughter in the locker room. I just, like you said, it's absolutely disgusting. I think it's a narcissistic motivation behind it all.
Well, you guys kind of opened the door too with your answers to that question, because you're talking about people who don't want to come out, they don't want, there could be repercussions or whatever. Do you all see in your age category and maybe in your circles, personal circles, are there a lot of closet conservatives that they come up to you and they'll say, well, I agree with you. I just can't say anything. Is that prevalent? Jacquelyn, you want to take it first?
100%. 100%, especially, and Winslow can go into more detail of this because of where her chapter is, especially in these big city areas or urban areas where we have so many people that will attend our meetings. We ask them to get further involved for either door knocking or phone banking or whatever else. And half the time, that initial thing is, well, I can't do it because if my picture gets put somewhere and my employer sees it, or my name is somewhere, I call someone and I work with them for some reason, like I just can't have that. I would get fired. Like, it's so prevalent in our urban areas, and it's sad because in a lot of these cases, you talk to them more, their coworkers who are Democrat or liberal leaning, they talk about their politics at work all day long. There's no issues. But
Exactly.
because they're conservative, they feel like they cannot say anything. And that's where we try to come in and be a nice environment, a fun environment to where you can speak freely. Whether you agree with all of our policies or not, we try to make it to where you're welcome here.
Yes, and I'll piggyback off that. So our club, Atlanta Young Republicans, where obviously we are the main metro chapter. We attract people from all walks of life that just are conservative leaning. They may not be the far right, may not even be so much consider themselves MAGA, but we do have people that are more conservative leaning, or that just want to, just like I did. I just wanted to come find some friends that I feel like I could talk about this movement with and just get to know more information and learn about the political process. But we're kind of that, we are, as YRs, especially our club in general, we are that stepping stone into the political process. And like she said, we're kind of this safe haven to come and speak freely, have a freedom of speech with what you believe, and just to learn. And so, but yes, there have been multiple people that say, hey, just whenever you get the pictures, please don't post that picture because I'm afraid. I'm like, is your work going to even be looking at our Facebook page? Like, I'm not, I won't tag you, but I try to respect everybody's wishes, but I kind of wish we got to that point where, and I don't think it's as bad now as it was 4 years ago. It was very taboo to be a conservative and be kind of out in the public with, oh, I'm a part of the Republican Party. But I'm hoping that now that Trump won with the popular vote and most of the swing states, that it's less taboo to be Republican. And I'm feeling that. But yeah, we've definitely experienced. We got canceled at Taco Mac. Over here in Sandy Springs in 2020 because some customers overheard something that they didn't even hear what was really said, and they told the manager to stop our meeting, and we had to stop, and they kicked us out and called the police. Yeah, it was all in the AJC and everything. So we've experienced cancel culture in our club. We've had people from all backgrounds come, but I'll tell you, it's something special about our club is that we do provide that environment where people can come and speak freely and make friends, and it's right in dead center of a blue county, so so it's definitely something special.
I think the
That's the
common,
one thing, if I
oh,
could.
yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry. That was the one thing, if I could, I want to really hype this up because I feel like there's a movement even within the party, if you look at party politics with the GOP, to where you're not conservative enough to be here. You're not Republican enough to be
Yeah.
here. And that's what I really pride. Yes, that's what I really pride. Not only what Atlanta has done, but what YRs across the state have done is that if someone shows up and they're not the same place on the spectrum as you as far as what Republican kind of politics you believe in, sometimes they're more libertarian, but we welcome them too, right? Sometimes they just have questions about certain policies because they're just introduced to this. We don't say, oh no, you're not MAGA enough, you can't be here. Like, we want you to be here because we understand that there are plenty of Republicans out there. We need to be a big tit party and welcome everyone because that's the only way that we succeed as a party. And so I really wanted to shout out Atlanta does that very well. We have a couple other metro chapters that do that really well, but the party can learn a couple of things or two from YR chapters, if you're asking me.
Yeah, if they come to any one of our meetings, they'll be like, wow, okay, gosh, there's not that we, are trying to toot our own horns on diversity, but you come to any of our meetings and you're like, oh, wow, this is like a melting pot. And it kind of, I think it challenges what the mainstream media and mainstream people believe about the Republican Party. And that's our generation. So
Yeah,
I'm proud.
it's kind of interesting. I got a little analogy. Over 20 years ago, I was the mayor of Peachtree City, and we founded a group called the Metro Atlanta Mayors Association, which was every mayor in metropolitan Atlanta. And I started this group with Shirley Franklin, City of Atlanta mayor, who was a Democrat, an ardent Democrat, notable Democrat. And we decided to create a policy because we found out we had a lot of the same problems that we agreed on. There were other issues that we didn't agree on, but we were willing to come together and work on the ones that we did agree on. And our policy was, unless everybody wanted to work around the issue, we weren't going to touch that issue. We would just go to the next issue and work on that. And it was amazing the synergy that you could create. And these were political opposites being able to work together. Only if we could do that within the Republican Party on a regular basis. I mean, could you imagine? Yeah, there may be one issue. Let's just hang that one up. Let's just put that one back on the rack and we'll talk about these other four things. And I think it sounds like, Winslow, you're off to a good start with that. So kudos to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, it's but like Jacquelyn was saying, I mean, we both were involved in this not to bring it up, but the Georgia GOP convention cycle this year. And you get pulled into all kinds of signal chats, and just it's unbelievable, but some of the things that I experienced. Now, you have to be careful about what you post on social media, because it's easy just to become a keyboard warrior yourself, because somebody may say something that you think is absolutely stupid,
Yeah.
and it makes people not want to join the Republican Party. And so I kind of pushed back a little bit on some folks, without going overboard. But yeah, I actually give props to Jacquelyn for the state chapter team coming up with this mission to try to support young Republicans to run for any level of the Georgia GOP office. And she can probably speak more to that in terms of the numbers. How many? I think we had 6 elected or something like that that's
I,
beyond
I,
the
I
district.
saw a post on that, and that is really saying something, because the Republican Party, like, for people who are in the party, working in the party, skews very older, very much older. And so it's so great to see younger adults getting in there, getting elected to positions. And then you've got a platform now that probably is going to more represent the electorate at best, instead of gearing towards, you know, 50 plus issues, if you're age 50 plus, which is what the group that tends to be the working core of the party in both parties. But I mean, that was a great initiative. If you started that, Jacquelyn, that I kept watching all the Facebook posts and everything going up with the candidates and everything. I thought that was wonderful. But one of the things too, though, going back to Winslow's point, was with the state convention. I had a lot of people tell me who were very enthusiastic going to the convention, and I had quite a few of them tell me that was my first ever state convention, and it's going to be my last ever state convention. I'm never going back again. And, boy, we have got to do better. And then one thing I worry about is, are we going to discourage the younger adults if they see that kind of behavior and they say, if this is party politics, I don't really want any part of it?
Yeah, I know several people that are really good leaders. I don't want to name names, but that may have run, were done with their YR role and then ran for something. And then because of all the craziness, we're like, this is not doing anything. Like, this is actually not advancing anything forward. This is a waste of my time. I decided to stick in it. I'm the 6th district secretary. I decided to stick with it, because it's not ever going to change if we don't continue being
Right.
involved. So I just, I hope that now that we have Jaquan Stenbridge, for instance, is on the state executive committee now. It's a great, we're making good headway into that, but generations change, and we're getting into our 30s and 40s, and we'll soon be into our 50s and 60s. It'll happen before we know it, and all of a sudden here we are, we're in the party, and we're heavily involved in the party. So it's going to be our generation that carries it forward. And um, I really hope that people don't quit, and that's what we're trying to help encourage people to stay involved, even when things get become comfortable being uncomfortable sometimes.
Right.
And you can that's what I've learned.
And it's
So
it's
And
going to
that's
be.
why too
Go ahead, Hunt.
we've tried to
Go.
develop a really good support system within YRs. Like Winslow mentioned, we have sits on the state executive committee, and then 30 plus now we're still seeing more and more get more involved, 30 plus within their county GOPs and their district GOPs. But like with Jaquan, some of the conversations that I heard or he had that he or told me about and was looking for advice about, the amount of older people that look like they're so supportive of young people getting involved until they don't agree with them 100% or they realize that they can't control us 100%.
Right.
The amount of people that, and I won't name their names because I don't want to give them more of a platform, to be honest with you, that, oh, he's inexperienced. Oh, well, when he called me, he didn't address me as ma'am. Well, he didn't ask for permission to have my phone number to contact me first. Like, super stupid stuff from people that legitimately have looked me right in the face and said, oh, well, I love young people. I want them involved. Like, at that point, you either do or you don't, and you need to either address that in your mind. But that's why we talked at convention. I gave a speech at convention. I was called snarky because of it. But I mean, we've gone through, like, Winslow can tell you like what she's had to go through when she ran for stuff, what she was called, what we've all been called, from trash to rhinos to more crude things that people don't realize that we can see. But that's what's so aggravating. And so we try to have a good support system within us to where We have a group chat. Someone sends a screenshot of, oh, look what I was called today. And we can kind of like joke about it and laugh it off because at that
We
point, it's that
bonded
person.
over we bonded
Yeah.
over yeah. So
We have like almost a trauma bond.
Well, well, at some point though, to further the efforts of the party, the people who are my age have got to come to the conclusion that we need to embrace these younger people, bring them up, give them opportunities to, to take leadership positions and everything. That doesn't mean take somebody straight out of college and make them the chairman of the state party. You've got to have some experience to, along the way, but give them those opportunities to have the experience. And then we should be backing out and being their support group. So you're bringing them up, we move to the side, and then we support them, and they're bringing up the next generation behind them. But we don't have that. We have this tenacity to want to cling on to the power. I have to hold my position. This philosophy, the party can't survive without me. My district would never survive if it wasn't for me. Well, you know what? It might be dying because of you. But
mhm,
you've got to bring the next ones up. And we
mhm.
can't wait till you're 98 years old and pass away, to change the mantle there. So,
Exactly.
hopefully we can pray about
Yeah,
such things.
and on that note, I mean, yes, there's a lot of it's easy to remember and be influenced by all the negativity, but we do have a handful of Gen X and boomers that come to our meetings just to support us, and they're our friends, so there is like there's a community, at least the people I feel that I align with in the party are the ones that have been heavily supportive of YR. So there are a good many that actually do want us involved. It's just the negative ones you have to the ones that are the troublemakers are the ones that want to cling on to power and just feel a little intimidated by maybe we do have skills that they don't have, like social media is a fine example of that, so the use of that.
Well, let me ask you this. What would you all suggest? Let's just say anything is possible, all right? Blank slate, anything's possible. What would you suggest that the party do to reach out to young female adults? What what do you think would what's that key that would open the doors just to even get them to think about things, to just to ponder things, not necessarily come across to the party lines, but what would you do to catch their attention and actually just say, look, would you contemplate on this idea?
I think really, if we're just looking, and I think different, if you're talking about nationwide, I think different groups do this really well. But as a party, I think we really need to focus our messaging on kitchen table issues, like household issues, instead of election integrity all the time. Um, we've had plenty of YRs that have young kids that get involved, and they can't always make a social hour or happy hour or something else. And so they'll try to get involved in the party as well to just get involved in every aspect. And they'll constantly call us and say, I'm never doing that again. All they talked about was election integrity and paper ballots and everything the whole time. And like, we've been past this issue so many times. Like Trump won. Like we had secure elections here. Like we are good. If we can move on past that, I feel like we just got stuck at that. That's like the little hurdle or the pothole that we can't quite get through. If we can actually focus again on kitchen table issues that a mom would see and really relate to, I think you could increase that involvement. I'm not saying it'd be drastic. I think just in general, it takes a little bit longer into maturing and aging, having kids of their own to become a little more conservative for women. But I think that could help. That could definitely help a lot.
What do you think,
Maybe an
Winslow?
idea is just to design some kind of strategy to have events, like if we're talking like, let's say Fulton County, GOP, have events that may be in these spaces where it's family friendly, or there's family friendly spaces, or spaces where these young women would be, that maybe have kids. Real events. It's community. It's what can we do to build our community into outreach to different demographics, and suburban women is one demographic. So I think somehow if we can get into those spaces and hold events that may pique their interest, and so they can know people on a personal basis and kind of understand what she said, like these kitchen table issues are and how that affects their daily lives and weekly lives, the lives of their children. I think that's a place to start. What that looks like, I'm not sure, but in my mind, it goes to events. Like, because I enjoy events, I enjoy the planning of them and execution, and then the community building through them. So I think that would be an idea.
I
Example that
know.
comes to mind of that, like you talked about, there's one of our YRs in Columbia County, super involved in YRs for a long time, has now joined the GOP board in Columbia County. They are actually planning, she's a mom herself, they are planning coffee socials at like 10:30 or I think 9:30, 10:30, something like that, especially during the school year, because that's when they've dropped their kids off at their daycare maybe or school, kindergarten, wherever else, and they might have an hour to come meet with some other conservative moms and be able to talk. They didn't necessarily go to a 7 p.m. happy hour maybe or a 8 a.m. breakfast on a Saturday, but 10 o'clock at a coffee shop, yeah, I can stop by on my way home. And so ideas like that, I think, are revolutionary, and I love that she's doing that down there.
Absolutely. I mean, sometimes just the smallest little incremental things can make a difference because you start a relationship and then you can build off of that relationship. I had in the past, we're about to post an interview that we did with Stephanie Zanker with Libre, Hispanic conservative organization. And we were talking about how Florida has just absolutely created a revolution in terms of conservative politics because they were literally becoming a solid Democrat state, and they have just shifted the other way. One of the key things was charter schools, and that's how they appealed to a lot of women, especially Hispanic and Black women, in these urban areas where the schools were just wretched. And they went in there and they said, "We care about your children. We want your children to succeed. We want to get them in a school where your children can flourish. And what do we need to do? And are you willing to work with us?" And it was a tidal wave. And I don't, I'm not a higher up in the Republican Party, but if I was, I would probably suggest, why don't we look at that model and say, we know you have children, all these families that have children. What do we do to make your children flourish in your area and create initiatives that, whether it's charter schools, safer parks, whatever it is, and put that in place and give them something personal, their own children, something to latch onto, an issue to latch onto. But it seems like it's just gone gangbusters in Florida.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's nice to see when something's working in another state. There's nothing wrong with taking that idea and trying it out in Georgia. Maybe just the principle around it. That okay, what does this demographic care about? And let's see if we can try to win them over that way. And not as much winning over, but it's influencing how they think about conservatism, and what the conservative values actually bring like to their lives for the better, how they make their lives better. And so I think, yeah, the school choice, the charter schools, just like here in Georgia with the Georgia Promise Scholarship, I think the more we can get the word out about that, and also figure out how we can engage with that demographic with certain events that are designed to appeal, to that particular group of people. That's where we gotta focus.
I don't think there's a greater feeling of hopelessness knowing that you can't move and your children are stuck in a school that is just not going to do anything for your children, maybe even put them in an unsafe environment as well as a non-educational environment. That's to me seems like that would be the most hopeless feeling you could ever have. I mean,
I
I
mean,
think
we
of it
saw that in Yeah, I mean, we saw that in Virginia in 2021 when Glenn Youngkin won.
right.
Like, so
Exactly.
many more people voted Republican conservative because they cared about their child's school. They cared about their education, what kind of education they were getting. That's a huge mover for people. And that's why y'all are exactly right. And I'm biased because I'm co-workers with Stephanie, and so I love what they're doing. But you have to meet people where they're at. Sometimes
Right.
you really do. They might not be the most conservative Republican person on the outside, but they might have that one issue where we can meet with them on, and then we can introduce them to a plethora of other issues. but you have to find what their passion is. And for a lot of people, that is their child's education.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, tell me, who are your female conservative icons? Who are the women that are really moving the needle for you guys?
Oh my gosh. Jacqueline, you go first. I gotta think for a second. I want to
I
get
mentioned her.
the.
I mentioned a couple of them earlier. If I could pick one here, Lauren Daniel, Representative Lauren Daniel. She's recently launched her state senate campaign to go back to the Old Dome. Absolutely love her. Huge icon for me. Like I just love her. On a national level, Katie Brett, the senator from Alabama. I think she's a great role model for young women just because you can see how much she's achieving and accomplishing while also being a mom. Like you can do both. So many young girls think you can't do that.
And they have the courage to be themselves too, about those two women. They have the courage to be genuine, to say, I don't care if you don't like my persona. I am who I am, and I'm going to be that person, which I admire greatly. How about you, Winslow?
Yeah, I mean, Tulsi Gabbard honestly jumps out of my mind. I know she's more of a newer Republican, but I read her book. I know some, people in our party that don't like certain things about her, people that do. But I think it was brave to say, you know what, this is not the same party that I was a part of for however many years and I served with, and so I'm gonna take a step out and go a different direction. And she didn't immediately jump to the Republican Party, but then she obviously, when there's an opportunity there and she felt like Trump's agenda was more in line with where she wanted to see the country going, then she bravely jumped ship, jumped onto our ship, into the party. And so I find her, I mean, I don't think she's a mother, but I do find her story remarkable. And yeah, she's just someone that I really wanted to interview so bad, but maybe I'll get the opportunity one day.
Well, well,
But
she's one too that doesn't. She tells you what she thinks, and
yeah,
she knows going into it that 45-50% of the people are going to disagree with her, but she's not afraid to say, "This is what I think." And as a veteran, I like her especially
uh-huh.
because she's been there, she's done those tours in the battle areas, and she's willing to say something that may not come off as a patriotic military, we've got to go in and rush it. She's like, no, there are people's lives at stake. We really need to think about what we're getting into here. And I love her deliberative process related to things in terms of foreign policy and stuff like that.
I would agree, and I read that in her book too, where it was she was talking about how these are our men, these are our sons, these are our husbands, these are our fathers. That should come first, right before we just decide to enter into anything impulsively. And so I was just excited to see her trajectory into Trump's cabinet, and hopefully I'll get to meet her one day.
Yeah. Well, let me turn a little bit here. I think, and you tell me if I'm wrong, okay? I think it's always best for conservatives to probably date conservatives, right? For good relationships. If that's not, do you agree? Is that the case? Let's just build the foundation. Is that probably the case? It's better for conservatives to date conservatives. Is that right?
I would say this environment, yes. And Jacqueline, she's spoken for in that regard. Yeah. So I mean, I dated, I'm actually divorced, not to get personal, but I mean, he wasn't really into politics. I wasn't really into politics then. I do think he was a registered Democrat. But yeah, I don't know. Because of my heavy involvement in Republican politics, I mean, if I do go out on dates, like I'm open about what I'm involved in because it's important to me. And if they think, okay, I can respect that, great. If they think, oh, that's awesome, even better. So I nowadays I tend to attract, yes, the guys that are more conservative because we would have that in common. Is we're at the point now where it's like, what are you going to teach your children? Are you going to teach them that boys can be girls and girls can be boys if they choose?
Yeah.
That's just one example. Or do you want to teach them, more biblical values and say what's true and what's not true? And it's very important with how you want to raise your kids in terms of the dating field. And so I think that nowadays I'm not saying it can't work as long as two people that may have differing views on some things, that's okay. But the foundational beliefs, I think, should be mostly similar, because what else are you really going to connect over? And what are you going to teach your kids if you have kids? So
I saw there was an article, I want to say it was in the Wall Street Journal. I could be wrong about that, but it was a lot of these people who were young conservatives, male and female, and they would go on these dating apps and they could never find anybody who was equally yoked, from a political, philosophical point of view. And it was just torture for them. And so, how do you find the other people who are conservatives in your community beyond, I know you have some groups and some channels that you can lock into, but even that would be limited, right? So what do you do?
well, there is one dating app. I haven't been on it, but it's called The Right Stuff. And I think it was created by somebody who used to work for Trump, right? I forgot his name, but
I can't remember his name right now, but yeah.
yeah. Anyway, but he puts on all these Instagram videos that are really funny, and so there are apps that are emerging, that where people can connect in that way. Online dating is such a, I mean, I'm just, this is my personal choice, but I'm just taking a hiatus from that part of my life, or that online dating, and, want to meet somebody more organically. But I do think that being involved in something that reflects your beliefs and your values is going to attract the right person, and getting involved in um, different organizations that are aligned with that, I think is very helpful.
To personally attest to that, I met my boyfriend through Young Republicans.
Okay,
I love
there
to
you
share that
go.
story. Um,
Yeah.
but it's just yeah, I love telling that story because you never know when you're gonna meet someone. But to echo what Winslow said, I think it was a Dave Ramsey clip I was listening to today, to where it says people that actually have successful, happy marriages agree on the core things. They agree on money, how to spend it. They don't argue over that. They agree on religion, and they agree on their children. There's one other one here, but they agree on how they're going to raise their children, whether that is in
Right.
the church, what schooling they're going to do, homeschool, public school, private school, all of those kind of things. If you can't agree on those issues, it's not going to work. And I think because it's just so divided at this point, like there's a complete difference between right and left, depending on how extreme you are on either side about those key things. Like Winslow brought up, like children, how you gonna raise your children? There's such a stark divide between the two sides of the party now. That there is a clear difference between the two. Even on religion, somehow faith can sometimes turn someone off because you're like, oh, wait, like, no, like you're a Christian. Sorry, I don't believe in any of that. Like, that's an issue for me. Like, it's such a stark divide at this point, that you really do need to agree on those foundation issues. But yes, if you're looking to meet someone, definitely get involved in more things. I've known plenty of people that have gotten their boyfriends gotten married through white young Republicans. Like, I know it's not super, super common, but I've known a decent amount of them.
Yeah, I could not imagine some of these people that I see screaming at some of these protests being married to a conservative. I just couldn't imagine that even being plausible. But yeah, there are issues, and I think, especially, yeah, I think in Georgia it might be a little easier, but if you were in, say, California or New York or Illinois and the Chicago area, it could be almost like you're in a dating desert out there, trying to find somebody. So, yeah, interesting. And I'll have to look up that app. We might even do an interview with them on that. That would be kind of interesting. Well, let me ask you this too: young adults, and you let me know if I'm wrong on this one. I don't see a lot of thought in general. Now, there are always exceptions, right? I mean, I would hold you two as the exceptions, definitely, but who don't understand like the foundational principles of what we say of in the Republican Party: limited government, personal responsibility, free market capitalism, law and order, the Constitution as a sacrosanct document that we need to adhere to. You don't modify the Constitution as you go. Is that really the case? Are you seeing a lot of that where if they don't have the foundational principles, and so it's harder to get them to, focus on anything that's conservative or Republican because they don't really understand it from the genesis?
Yes, absolutely.
100%. Like
Yeah.
there was, you go ahead, ma'am. I have a story to share afterwards, but you go ahead.
Here, I just have a comment. So on that, yeah, I think that is because, like I said before, when you are, depending on your social circle or what you're taught in school or what some of these external influences in your life have shaped what you think about the Republican Party or conservatives. And oh, conservative, that sounds boring. That sounds like, oh, you just want to, you know, control everybody. You want people to be controlled by religion, or they think that they're all Christian nationalists or whatever term they want to throw out there to describe what they think of as Republicans or conservatives. um I just, I, like you said, yeah, it's not understanding. So when you understand what limited government means, well, how that's different from a monarchy system in England, the fact that they're calling, the whole No Kings a protest was ridiculous, because it's like he's not a king. Like, we have a legislative branch and we have a judicial branch, and there's still checks and balances. Like, he does have some executive powers. It's called executive branch. Like, it's not it's just, to me, that was such a misleading, such a manipulative message, which you see it on the left all the time. But I think it's how it's messaging. It's how the messaging is delivered and what people fundamentally believe about the Republican Party, which is not even true. When they really get down to it, they shouldn't want to be put everything, all their eggs in one basket into the government, and have the government, take care of all your business, or have the government have the say in everything in your life. To me, that's more in line with a monarchy system where the government's in control of your life versus a limited government, which is what conservatives are. That's what we believe in. So yes, agree with you.
Jacqueline, what do you think?
You brought up personal responsibility, and that made me think of something I saw on Instagram at one point where obviously with Trump coming back in, there is a actually they're cracking down on people who haven't paid their student loans back. They're just ignoring the emails about, your $100 is due this month. They either feel, I don't know if it's from their family life or from college or what, but they feel like, oh no, like I don't have to pay that back right now. Like they're not going to come after me. I don't have to pay it. They are now freaking out because it's impacting their credit score. And so I just remember watching, I was scrolling through Instagram, and there was this reel of this girl bawling her eyes out because her credit score has dropped like 200 points. Because you know what? She was in, I think she was a delinquent, whatever you want to call it, for being late on your student loans for like 3 years or 2 years or something like that. Like, there's no sense now of personal responsibility to where, no, the government doesn't just pay that for you. Like, your college isn't just free. Someone has to pay it, whether it goes back to the taxpayer or wherever else. If Biden had gotten through what Biden wanted to do, like, we as taxpayers were paying for everyone's college education. But now, like, yes, you borrowed $100,000 to go to school, you have to pay that back. I know that sucks. I have student loans. I have a small amount, thankfully, but I don't like paying that every month. I think it's ridiculous, but still, like, you have to. There's a sense of personal responsibility there. And there's a concerning gap with people in our generation sometimes where I'm like, how in the world did you not even realize that was possible? Like, yes, your credit score is going to be impacted because you don't pay something back.
Right. And
Right.
with freedom of choice comes responsibility, just like what you said, is basically what you're
Mhm.
saying. So I chose to take out student loans from physical therapy school, and you better be sure I'm paying them back. I've been paying them back since I was 30 years old. So, and yes, that means I may not spend money on this. I may not spend money on that, something I impulsively want right now. But it's kind of that delayed gratification of, I'm taking responsibility to pay this off myself, right? Without feeling entitled to somebody else paying it for me. Because when you're entitled, that's just putting the power to something else, right? And that's not self-empowering. And I think if we can just drive that messaging home in terms of conservatism, people start to wake up, hopefully, in our generation, and that you're not just born entitled to be given X, Y, and Z. So education is a choice.
I think in Congress, that's probably one of the largest problems within Congress that I have witnessed over my lifetime is the fact that they think the government can solve all your problems, and people have become responsive to that and they want to have all their problems solved. And it's kind of interesting because if you look at the university system back at the founding of the nation, I'm not that old, but the university system, They were all started by religious institutions. A lot of the hospitals were started by, the different Christian and Catholic denominations and whatnot. I was born in Georgia Baptist Hospital in downtown Atlanta. That hospital does not exist anymore. Now the government has to fund all the hospitals, and we can't do it through charitable donations anymore and do it for all the right reasons. All of that is gone. And that is what really build your community. And we just have lost a lot of that now. The church is relegated to just being a church. That's only where I go on Sunday. We go, we talk, we sing, and then we leave. We leave the church. And the church doesn't go anywhere outside of its property boundary lines. And we just seem to have lost a lot of that sense that we do have responsibilities. We can pitch in and we can make the place a better ourselves and be more efficient, more accountable, more responsible. But that it's pretty much give it to the government, let them solve the problem. And of course, government never solves any of our problems. They just create more. Well, let me throw this at you. Since you guys are the internet generation, censorship, doxing, propaganda, what can we do to get around some of these obstacles? Because it seems like every time there is, an issue that comes up that conservatives want to speak on, censorship, doxing, and propaganda, misinformation, whatever you want to call it, gets heaped on these folks. Is there another way to get around the internet, or should we look at doing things differently on the internet? I know there are certain, Rumble is a good example where they allow people to have more conservative content without censorship and things of that nature. But it seems like every time there's an issue that starts to rise, it just gets overwhelmed by all this other stuff. Is there any way to get around all that?
You mean so are you talking? Yeah, go ahead. You can answer first. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if I'm understanding your question correctly and looking at this way, I feel like in general with a lot of our messaging, we're very defensive. Like I feel like for the most part, the left is getting out there first, and then we're having to come in and say, "Oh, wait, that's not true. Actually, this is what we believe," or "Actually, no, don't believe this infographic you saw on Instagram. This is what we're doing." I think we need to be more proactive with a lot of our messaging, and really get what our points are out there first and what the truth is out there first. I think the biggest example I can think of with this, where I feel like Republicans could have been more proactive with their messaging, was with the whole Roe v. Wade being overturned. We almost we were beat to the punch because sure enough, we saw that get overturned. Great moment for us. We're celebrating. The left is coming up with their own infographics that they're posting on Instagram for our generation to see and repost that weren't necessarily true, scaring people, right? That's that propaganda you see. They were able to get out there first because we didn't sufficiently explain ahead of time, be proactive in explaining what this actually meant. Like, no, you were not going to get thrown into jail because of this issue. It just means that it is now up to the states to decide this. It's almost like we didn't take that initiative to really publicize that first. And so the Dems and the left, they beat us to it, right? And so then we're having to go on a defense to actually correct the narrative, but that narrative is already in people's minds because they weren't fully educated on it to begin with. So hopefully that answers your question, but I think that could help out a lot is if we're more proactive than reactive and defensive all the time.
Yeah, I think that those that are activists, especially on online platforms in the conservative party, our party, it is, yes, to be ahead of the game. I like that idea because we say, okay, we know what's coming, therefore we can tailor our messaging to make sure people are educated. And also, there has to be, and I haven't really figured out. It's just an idea. There's people can just see anything and see one thing and that influence what they think. So they may believe something. We got to get away from just believing it because you first see it. And how can we get back to saying, okay, let me check to make sure this is actually a reliable source of information I'm getting. That's one thing. Another thing is I actually do like that there's not as much fact checking on Facebook. I will throw that out there. It was terrible in 2020, 2021.
Right.
Oh my gosh, 2022 even, I think. But since Trump has taken office and Mark Zuckerberg has rolled it back. Basically, almost seemed like he almost apologized for all the fact checking back 4 years ago, and how that influenced people's decision with COVID treatments, and it's crazy. I like that I'm seeing that we're not getting, there's more free speech being allowed now, and that's, I imagine that's partially, mostly to do with the fact that the country pretty much voted Trump historically, with pretty large margins. And so compared to 4 years, compared to 2016, really. But I think that, like Jacquelyn said, get ahead of the game on our messaging. Not so much that we're giving out propaganda, because propaganda has kind of become a word that means, oh, it's maybe probably false. It's trying to influence you without really understanding the issue. But being, somehow putting more educational resources out there, say, hey, it's actually important to check the source, and here's criteria as to what makes it a reliable source of information, so you're not just absorbing stuff that's like not even really true or even half true. So
Well, I've often wondered. I do think social media helped Donald Trump in 2024. I think going on Joe Rogan and all these other shows, I think that really did help with certain demographics and probably brought him over. But one thing I often wonder, and I'd love to hear what you think: are we relying on the internet too much as a tool? Because the internet, as we know, the DOJ can call a company and pressure them to do something, as we found out. The person who owns the tech thing can just turn you off. Are we relying too much on a tool that is too easily manipulated when the powers against you want to manipulate it? Should we be doing more grassroots activism, conservative on the street or in the schools or wherever, feet on the ground kind of stuff that we seem not to be doing nearly as much now because we're relying on the internet?
yeah, I mean, that's our clubs. That's what we focus on, especially during the election cycles, is get out the vote. Because we understand fundamentally how important that human contact is in that face to face conversation. Because yes, it's easy to hide behind a computer screen and just give your opinion all day. I mean, we're all guilty of it. I've done it, and then you realize, oh crap, I just wasted an hour of my time. I didn't change anybody's mind. But no, but when you do have those face-to-face conversations, even if they're a little bit uncomfortable, it can turn into something, um, where it makes them kind of step back and think a little bit. It's like, okay, this person's willing to talk to me, and even if they disagree with me, they're not going to treat me like I'm absolute trash. So I mean, I think I'm with you. I think that more activism, more grassroots activism, holding events, trying to build up community, and then during the election cycle, go door to door, and that's what Americans for Prosperity that Jacquelyn works for. I mean, they do just that, and they train people to do that, and she can probably speak more to that. So we'll take that from you.
That's what we're trying to do, not only with AFP stuff like you mentioned, but just YRs in general. There is a book or study out there to where, in general, activity in civic events is just down. Like, you don't see bowling leagues, you don't see dinner clubs, you don't see people doing that stuff anymore. That was a pre-COVID, I think, gradual decline as well, but then COVID, I think, absolutely just changed it because so much became available to us online. Like, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago we would have met in a studio somewhere and done this, right? But now, actually, no, we're all in the comforts of our own home doing this via Riverside, Zoom, Teams, all these things. And it's completely different. And so we're having to obviously be very present on the internet in general, because I feel like that's where the left is really capitalizing and moving, but they still have their operations on the ground. I think this is a huge thing when Obama got elected, and reelected, so both of those times, to where the relational organizing with his campaign was insane. And so that's why yes, to answer your question, we still need to focus on that grassroots and planning events and doing those kinds of things, and getting to know maybe just people in our community, talking to neighbors, right? Like, you don't necessarily have to go door knock and be active in a neighborhood that's not yours. Like, maybe just start with your own, just the people on your cul-de-sac, right? I feel like that used to be a huge thing even when I was growing up. I remember in neighborhoods, my parents going to block parties That was
Right.
just at the end of the cul-de-sac. Everyone from the neighborhood came down there. Y'all talked about what was going on, talked about how terrible the HOA was, like all those kind of things. And you don't really see that much anymore. Um, and we need to get working on that even more so than we already do. But I mean, we've seen it increase with young people. I feel like we've chartered one new club so far, with two coming in July and then one in August, and all throughout the state. And so I think young people are wanting to get active and do things. Um, Obviously, because we have a statewide election next year as well, I think they're already gearing up and getting excited for that. But people want to do stuff. I still think people do want to do things. It's just they need other people that also want to do it with them.
Well, for the viewers out there, there's a book that was written years ago. It's called Bowling Alone. I cannot remember the author's name, but it talks about the evolution of people groups meeting communally and talking and sharing with one another, and they predicted exactly what we have today, that that was going to disintegrate. And it's called Bowling Alone because I remember my parents used to be in the bowling league, and we would go, and the kids would go to the bowling alley, and all the parents would talk to each other, the kids would play with each other. We knew all those families, and it was once a week, and it was a great time, in addition to church and other things that we would do on a weekly or monthly basis. And it was more of that, I know these people, I care about these people, I'm looking out for these people, and you could share things without somebody yelling at you. And that book in particular predicted exactly to the point where we would be now. So it was just kind of phenomenal how right they were. So if you're interested in how that dynamic uh, came through over time, read Bowling Alone. And let me lead you with this, ladies. This will be our last one, but I want to know, what is the state Republican Party? Are they giving young adults, organizations with young adults, the equipment, the sessions that are needed educationally for young people to run for office and support key issues? I know, Jacquelyn, your organization is huge on that, but are we seeing that from the state party at all? Are they helping people gear up for running for office and how to rally behind an issue?
Yeah,
No,
not
I mean, we need
necessarily. I
we need
think
to
there's
talk about it.
been
Yeah,
Yeah, there's been, and this is, I'll preface all of this, but this is not a knock towards anybody. I just think since 2020 and a lot of the issues and a lot of the divide between Republicans in general, um, I think that's affected a lot of things, and I think that's changed the mindset and the goals for a lot of people within the party. And gradually, and I think this is something that Chairman McCune is trying to do, as well as the other people that are elected are wanting to do, get back to that, to where, yes, actually, the party apparatus is something that is viable, that's strong, that we need to actually utilize. But for so long, it's been overshadowed by other orgs coming in. Like you mentioned, AFB. We do a lot of that. Greater Georgia does a lot of that. America's First Policy Institute does a lot of that. There's so many different orgs that come in and help because they had to fill a gap. Um, and I think we have people in the party apparatus now that are trying to get back to where, yes, they can provide some of those resources and they can help a young person try to run.
Winslow, give us your take on that. What do you think? What if you don't see something coming from the party to help young adults? Because there needs to be some sort of structure in place
Yeah.
through the party. What would you do? I mean,
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
they're capable of doing it.
they are. So and so I ran for secretary of Fulton County GOP, didn't get it. It's fine. And let me get back to Jacqueline's point, but I was just gonna say no. I actually went through the Republican leadership of Georgia last year. I graduated. It was it used to be the Coverdale Leadership Institute. It
Right.
became moved into RLG, and that's exactly what they do, is help you learn about campaign finance laws. They help you learn about how to run a campaign, how to fundraise, so there are, like she said, those organizations out there that help you. I was just nominated because it was sort of a rite of passage to be the AYR president, to go through RLG. um, but, but anyway, but in terms of the state party, no, I can't say that, I've there's been any outreach to us to help train us. I will say though that the Fulton County GOP, the leaders, after the county convention, did ask me if I was interested in helping out with membership. And so I was like, okay, well, that was basically what I did for 3 years with AYR, pretty successfully. I found my talent in that. And so I'll now be leading Central Fulton membership. So, but I spoke with the vice chair who's heading it, and she came with the idea of having trainings for precinct chairs and house district chairs, and they are now starting to realize that, hey, and much to much to with Jacquelyn and the state board's efforts, we do need to bring young people in, and maybe we can have events where we can train people to how, what does a house district chair even do? What does a precinct chair do? What are the responsibilities? And start very local level, and then so we can continue to grow our party. But I would like to see that happen where there's more opportunities to learn how to run for office. What do you do when you have when you actually get elected? And then what are all, what can we do to help people that want to be involved, who are just so happen to have these more local roles, to what can they do? What is their basically action? What are their action items in order to grow the Republican Party in their precinct or House district?
That's awesome. Well, let me give you this. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that we should mention to viewers in relation to this interview? What would you want to leave with the audience?
I would say just give us a chance, and I think it's important to recognize when there's young talent, and to use that talent for the betterment of the party. That's what I would say to just the state party in general. And that we can, use social media. We have to use it. We have to get savvy with it. However, it's equally important to focus on building up the community so people have a network, and can fall back on that, and really just drive home our messaging of what it means to be a conservative.
Jacqueline, how about you, hon?
But also, and this is what is, I think, is sometimes deemed controversial, but the Republicans, we're here to stay. Like, we're not going anywhere. We're going to be involved. We're not necessarily just the future of the party. We are the party. That's something that we really need to start saying, is that we are the party right now. We are the target base that the party needs to message to. And so we're not here to take over. We are here to learn, get experience, get involved. And so when people that have been in leadership for so long move on, we know what to do. But also too, if you're a viewer, if you're listening and you have grandchildren, children that want to get involved, please connect them with us. It's georgiayr.org. You can see all of our chapters on there. We're across the state, from Northwest Georgia up in like Dalton, Georgia, to the city, all the way down to now Lowndes County in Valdosta. We're involved everywhere. And so we can get you plugged in, and we would love to have you.
That's awesome. Lady, I really appreciate this. I hope we get an older audience in the party that really watches this and pays attention to this, because there's a lot of fruit in this interview here. I mean, I really like what you've had to say, and I think you've given us some keen insights in what a younger demographic is expecting and what they're looking for and what they need. So hopefully, I will say this, because I'm guilty of saying it too in my generation. I'm the last year of the baby boomers, okay? We often say when we're doing political stuff, we're doing it for the future generations. I'm doing this for my kids and my grandkids. Well, we've got to give our kids and our grandkids, who are your age, a chance to be in leadership positions. We've got to give them a chance to lobby for issues that are important to them. And we've got to ask them what's important to them from now on. So hopefully we've given them some insight into how to do that in this interview. So, ladies, thank you very much for all you've done, and I've really enjoyed this.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
thanks
much.
for having us.
Yeah, and thank you for having us. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Great, thank you.